and welcome to Counterpress on The Ringer and Spotify. I'm in studio with Kate Longhurst and Gilly Flaherty. On today's show, we talk through some big results at the bottom of the table as two managers are under pressure. We also talk about Arsenal getting their season back on track, but it was a bit of a snooze fest at the Emirates. Jill, you were at that snooze fest, as was I yesterday. It was a tough watch. We'll get into it properly, but how was your trip to North London?
Yeah, it wasn't too bad, to be fair. It was, the roads were pretty empty. Got there nice and early. Then, once was in, I saw Jane Ludlow.
Little throwback.
Yeah, which was nice. Have a little catch up. But it was as much as the sun was out yesterday. We was in the shade for the whole of the game. It was cold.
Yeah.
And do you know when you get home and then you can't warm up because you've been in it all day, and then you're looking across and you're seeing fans on the screens and that all warm in the sun, absolutely fuming the gantry. Yeah.
Kate, where were you?
I was at Bromley FC watching London City.
Yeah, trip to South London.
Yeah.
How was that?
Good. I felt like when I turned up, trying to find, it points to away fans one bit, so I walked round there and all I could find was a Portaloo and just these men doing random work. So I was like, right, I've not come to the right bit. So then when I got in, it was actually quite easy to find a seat.
Because that was the away fans probably for a Bromley game,
yes,
rather than a London City Lionesses game. Did you go into the nice Bromley FC clubhouse bar thing?
No, I didn't. I just did the whole sit in the stands and watch the
old
game.
School.
And
Any good snacks? Any good tea, coffee situation?
I didn't actually buy anything, but
right.
There were two girls in front that had chips, and when you can smell like the salt and vinegar, and I was like, that smells good.
Yeah.
And also a ball nearly hit me in the crowd, but it did actually hit a girl 2 rows in front, and it knocked her phone out. And because it's like the seating, there's like little gaps, it went under the stand. So she was on her hands and knees trying to find this phone under the stand, and then I never saw her again.
So
she disappeared.
She fell into a black hole.
Disappeared under the stand, but she was like trying to find her phone, and she was with 2 other people, and they went to find it and they didn't come back. So I don't know whether she got her phone back.
We hope, if you're listening, we hope you found your phone.
It was the film. Is it the second one of it? When the clan's underneath the
snaps his Achilles,
the stadium. No, when the
girl
gets distracted.
You're thinking Final Fantasy? No, Saw. Oh,
no. I think it's in It too. When the little girl,
Gilly,
I think it's a baseball game or something.
I can't look. I know sometimes your cultural references really go off one, but It too is quite. It too is quite specific. I don't know how many people would have seen that film. Maybe that's
there
just
me.
There is
definitely a film where there's a baseball game going on, and the girl gets distracted from her mum, and she goes underneath, and she gets killed by. I swear it's It.
Oh,
so maybe that happened at Bromley.
I hope
maybe
not.
that's where she's gone.
I haven't heard anything like that happen.
So she did disappear into a black hole, sort of.
Literally.
Oh, well, on that note, let's start with what happened at the Emirates as Arsenal beat Brighton 1-0. This was a game that I think Arsenal fans will just be relieved that they won, but it wasn't a classic, and I think there'll still be nerves about what this means for performances overall. I did see a funny post from an Arsenal fan on Instagram who posted a picture of them and their mates in the stands and said, we'll always have the attendance trophy. So I think maybe Arsenal fans are realising that this season it could be a frustrating one. But Jill, because I know you were there doing BBC, they got the job done. So first things first, let's start with that. They won, ending that 4-game winless run. And that is very important for confidence of this team.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those ones where we've all probably been there, where it's just so important just to get the 3 points. But it was a boring game. And even it was at the end when they're like, the director's going like, right, you've got to think of a player of the match. And I was like, I was really struggling to think, because
who did you pick in the end? Because
I picked Van Domselaar, but the reason I picked her, well, she made a good save in the second half, but it was more so because of what happened midweek against Lyon. And naturally, when a goalkeeper makes mistakes in games, it's costly. And I think obviously there was a lot of talk. Obviously, she made a mistake against West Ham a few weeks back as well. So I think for her, after coming back from that Lyon game, it was really important that she came for everything yesterday. She didn't really drop anything. Do you know what I mean? It was really like a decent, solid game from her. And that's what I mean. But it was not like normally when it's played a game, like you normally have at least one outfield player that's like shines. And I think the only other person I could have probably give it to was Russo, because I think she's done a lot of running off the ball yesterday and a lot of selfless work for the team. But it's just when Chelsea do this and they manage to get results, and it might just be a 1-0 game, they at least create a lot of chances. And sometimes it's the opposition who the goalie's having a worldie, or Chelsea just can't hit the target as such, but they're creating a lot. Whereas I felt like with Arsenal yesterday, there wasn't really that there. I think they moved the ball so slowly, and they move it. Obviously, they've got comfortable possession, but they're not moving it quick enough for them to actually move Brighton. And I feel with Brighton, I mean, Brighton had chances, but if Brighton could just have a little bit more of numbers and probably a little bit more quality going forward, they could have punished Arsenal as well yesterday. And I think obviously looking at the goal, Olivia Smith's trying to put a ball across the box to Russo, it takes... I said, you know, like when I've scored no goal like before, when, you know, you stick your leg out, but it wasn't even that. The defender's just running and it just literally takes it in her stride and it goes in. But sometimes you need that luck when you are obviously the opposition. But yeah, it just seemed really flat there. And it was just... It's one of the ones where I feel they just needed to get the points. Doesn't matter how you get them, but it's just not being too sure what's going to come ahead for Arsenal.
Yeah, you want the sort of performance they would have wanted, Kate, is that kind of we're back, really confidence building. They've got Champions League this week and then it will be international break. I think a lot of those players will kind of actually probably be quite looking forward to the international break, getting into a slightly different environment, linking back up with international teams, a different sort of challenge, just switching it up, because I do think it feels like a team that's sort of going through the motions here. I think they lack energy, they lack creativity, a lot of predictable changes, a lot of predictable rotations, which aren't necessarily challenging players because you're seeing the same sorts of players swap in and out. What also a trend that we've seen happen throughout this season, and yesterday's game played out like the Villa game a lot, I think, which is this like Arsenal start really well in those first 20 minutes. You see them pushing, you see them creating. Olivia Smith was getting so much space on that right-hand side, and I thought, oh, okay, this is where the creativity is going to come. You know, maybe they'll build on their lead. But after the first 20 minutes, so a lot of people wrote about this, but they had 5 shots in that first 20 minutes and they didn't have another shot in the first half. So it's kind of like, where are they building that momentum? Because once they die off, they really die off in games. And then you kind of think that gives the opposition confidence. They start to think, okay, we can build it. And that's exactly what happened with Brighton. And I agree with you, Gilly, like they just didn't have the creativity or quality to actually create enough that was going to give them an equaliser. But they kept giving Brighton hope the way that Arsenal didn't see off the game.
Yeah, I agree with Gilly, though. I think when you're in a run like that, and they've had some difficult games, it's not like, you know, they're losing games to teams that they should automatically beat like every single time. But I think the result is far more important, because when they look at the results today and they look at the table today, if they'd have dropped points, that was their season in the league completely over, whereas they still have a tiny bit of hope. I know Chelsea are relentless, they haven't dropped any points yet, but I still think they can have that tiny bit of belief that, look, if we can get the results against the bigger teams and we can keep winning, we're still in with an outside chance. But I only caught the second half of the game, and I put the game on in the car, but obviously couldn't watch it while I was driving. And it
Just
was
in case,
just
to let everyone know.
just in case the person that I went in the
was
back of.
happening.
But so I put it on. I think 10 minutes had gone, so I actually missed all the excitement of Arsenal's attacking, and I was listening to Gilly's commentary and like
She put it on mute.
Exactly, that's why I had to watch it. But it was almost like, oh, Brighton seemed to be the team that are now getting the better chances or having some more shots than Arsenal. So it was kind of a weird one for Arsenal, because I think if you'd have gone and asked the fans, more than anything, they would have wanted the result. But sometimes you can't help but come away from a game feeling a bit flat when the performance isn't how you expect it to go, or exactly what you touched on, that you want to see a bit more energy, a bit more passion, just something to go, we're really fighting for these points. So I don't think it's like the players are getting complacent, But sometimes when things are not going well, it's just really hard to get yourself going. And that almost seemed what it was like in the second half that I was watching. Just things weren't quite clicking. And that's been a pattern in the last few games.
Yeah, no, you said Chelsea haven't dropped any points. Obviously, there's just the one draw to Manchester United, but they haven't lost a game.
That one.
No, they haven't lost a game, which I think, that is the relentless nature of them, right? Is up until that draw, they'd won all their games, and that builds such a big lead. And Arsenal, as soon as they get on the back foot, that makes it, I think, difficult. Looking ahead, though, I think there was a player who, for me, Jill, had the biggest impact of the game, and that's Kyra Cooney-Cross, who kind of really lit up that midfield and wanted to make stuff happen. I think she got 4 successful dribbles, which was the most of any Arsenal player in the game, and she was only on for like half an hour. And obviously she knows coming on that she's kind of playing to try and get a start, because she's yet to start this season. And she had that energy. She beat a couple of players. She was trying to progress the ball. There was another moment where she kind of gave away a bit of a sloppy foul, but all in all, you could see she was trying to make an impact, and it's probably the most we've seen of her as well in a game, because she'd been a little bit limited to these like 5-minute cameos, which isn't particularly, I think, helpful for any player. But it's important, I think, that Slegers now looks to those players that are coming on and trying to sort of shake things up in games, rather than what we've seen a lot this season, which is 60 minutes, Mead and Kelly come on together, Ford and Smith come off. Smith didn't need to come off in that game for me. I think she was looking great and she was causing problems, and I felt like Arsenal needed to hit her earlier when she had the space. I think you were mentioning it, Jill, about the way that they were passing so slowly. Every single time you felt like the move was on, everything would slow down, and then it's like, okay, we're back to square one. On a pitch like that at the Emirates, that's actually when you can afford to move it a little bit faster and take other teams out of shape. Same with their press. Brighton like to play out from the back. Arsenal last season completely dismantled them at the Emirates by pressing them. For me, it was like they just sat off too much as well.
Yeah, I think if Kyra Cooney-Cross could have probably had a whole of the second half, she would have been up there in one of my contentions for player of the match, because I think her and Blackstenius, I think, done really well when they come on, because Arsenal started to, when Blackstenius comes on, then that those runs in behind, as much as Russo tries to do it, Russo's game is more coming to feet, holding it up, bringing other people in. Whereas I think then when you have Blackstenius on, she naturally just pulls off the back of defenders' shoulders, and there was chances where the ball was being slipped into her and she's having them angled shots where she's sort of on the half turn and she's having a go.
There was a huge chance she should have scored as well. That one that was like just past the post?
Yeah.
That was massive chance.
But that, from her coming on, she then naturally stretches her back line. And for both of them, but for me, Cooney-Cross coming in, she just brought that energy into the midfield, and that's what I think sometimes it's all nice having that possession. But if you're not moving the team or you're not doing anything with it, then what's the point? And I just felt that when Arsenal took so long to go from back to front, that then when Brighton pressed, if they didn't maybe get their press right and Arsenal beat it, that's when you go quick at a team. There was one chance when Arsenal broke from the back, and I think their left back for Brighton had literally joined all the way in, and it took Arsenal that long to get the ball up. She was then able to put a block in, which I was like, for a corner, and I was like, that should never have happened, because she was literally in the opposition's box. And that's what I think, they move it so slow that they allow them teams to get back defensively. It's sort of a bit like, you're passing, you're like, right, we broke it, but let's just give them time to recover to then try and beat it again. You've already broke it, you've already broke that press, so then you've got to go at it quickly. And I feel like maybe that is a little bit of potential complacency with players who know that they're starting. Whereas obviously when you get substitutes come on, they sort of want to have that impact. And like I said, Olivia Smith didn't need to come off. She didn't look tired. But I also don't think they get the best out of her either, because Arsenal's wingers they're not really like line huggers as such. They sort of come in. Whereas if I'm coming up as a fullback, if I'm coming up against Olivia Smith, my worst fear would be her being touchline.
And just charging at you and saying, I will beat you for pace. I kind of want Olivia Smith to be used as a take on, like hug the touchline and just like speed down the wing, or like she was at Liverpool, a bit of kick and run, a bit of kick and run with someone like Olivia Smith. I just, on a pitch like the Emirates, I don't understand why Arsenal haven't done that a little bit more.
Yeah, but even on the other side with Ford. Ford is such a good dribbler, and whether it's her left foot, whether it's her right foot, but they come so in that they're already standing where the defensive fullbacks are. So, like I said on air yesterday, like, if I'm a defender, I'm thinking like happy days. One, you're not moving, so that's my job's easy because you're not moving anywhere. And two, our unit is so tight. But if you're then going Ford one touchline, Olivia Smith the other touchline, then as fullbacks you're like, I can't be too far away from them. And then if you've then got the likes of Katie McCabe come inside a couple of times, or you've got the midfield that they have and that rotation that they have in there, you're then worrying as a defence. But where they're so in and everyone's in, then by the time they get it, you're already set. So it's a lot harder.
That first 20 minutes, there were moments where Smith was finding that pocket space between McLaughlin and Ollie Slegers, and that was causing Brighton all sorts of problems because Arsenal were kind of spinning it out to Smith early enough that she was finding that space and that overlap. Then eventually they just didn't switch it fast enough, so the advantage of the space that she had was then lost, and then it was kind of going back over, and then they're so kind of, like you said, Jill, they're too patient with it that the moment to try and cross or the moment to try and play a ball across the box is lost because Brighton have the numbers, or they're trying to play a looping ball into the far post and there's no one there. That's what I kind of feel. It's like the breakdown of things sometimes, Kate, happens too often.
Yeah, and we sort of said that a little bit last season, and I thought with Liv Smith coming in, a much more direct player that does like to get it out her feet and get at players, could be a really big difference for them, like a breath of fresh air, because Gilly said Caitlin Ford is a very good dribbler, and if she slows you down and then she can knock it 2 yards, she's really hard to keep up with, and she can chop and she can change her body position that really can like spin defenders round in a circle. And then you've got Beth Mead that can also do the same, but she's looking to maybe work a half yard to cut inside to then get her shots off. Chloe Kelly, like, you have got these players that can cause defences problems. But like you said, if they're already compact and they're already touch tight, half the job for the defender is already done because they're not able to build up a bit of speed. Then if they are playing balls back to Katie McCabe, or you're trying to get her on the overlap, you're already condensing the space that she can work with. So it is frustrating, I think, that Arsenal have such an abundance of talent and so many players that they can use, but at the moment they're not looking like the most threatening team to score goals, which at the beginning of the season, the first 2 games, I was really excited thinking, wow, Arsenal are the team that are going to score goals and put probably 4 or 5 past a lot of teams. And we're not seeing that now. It's almost like they need 1 goal and then they're hoping that they're going to defend well and stay in the game because they could concede. And that's not Arsenal. Over the years, I think there's been teams with Arsenal where they are patient and sometimes they overplay it just for the sake of overplaying it. But you always thought they could kill teams off when they need to. And at the moment, that's not happening.
Yeah, well, let's talk about one of the sides that Arsenal did put 5 past this season, West Ham, next. Sorry, Kate, had to make that link there for West Ham, but I know you were there. Unfortunate for West Ham because really they probably did deserve a point from this. Kinga Schmezic mistake, dilly-dallies on the ball, because Farasani's lurking. She doesn't realise, nicks it, scores. West Ham lose. That's extended their WSL losing run to 8 games in a row, stretching back to last season. So they're the first non-newly promoted team to lose at least 8 in a row since Spurs in March 2023. They lost 9 in a row, also under Rhiannon Skinner. So an unfortunate copycat record for her. And it's not been a good start to the season for them. We've talked about it already this season, but it does feel like something's kind of got to give at this point.
Yeah, it's frustrating because yesterday they were actually much better. I think it's probably the best I've seen them this season. They looked organised defensively. I think the first 10, 15 minutes London City were on top and I was thinking this could be another tough day. But their organisation, I like them more as a back four. I think that back four that played yesterday was probably as good as it's been this season. I think they lack in midfield, if I'm being honest. I think they're really struggling to dominate in midfield, and whether that's personnel or the way that it's been set up. But the goal is the goal, and when you're down the bottom, sometimes those sorts of things happen. It's really disappointing for her because she was in tears at the end of the game, and of course that's unfortunately being part of a goalkeeper. Those things can happen, but when you're down the bottom, they're the things that you really just cannot allow to happen. But yeah, the record now, how many games we played? 6?
Yeah, 6 in the WSL this season.
6 games, 6 losses. At some point, you're wondering if they are going to pull the trigger, because they've got Man City next, which, if we're being realistic, Man City are a team that are winning a lot of games and are, doing well, playing well. And you're kind of looking at going, well, where are the next points going to come from? I think they have Everton and Leicester after that, which are 2 huge games. But I don't know, as a club, what point you say, do we need to make the change now? Or do we give it till Man City and then bring someone in? Or if we get something against City, do we keep the job? Look, I'm not here to suggest whether people should be sacked or not. But I just think as a group of players, they just look so deflated that sometimes actually something fresh can give you a different perspective. It can give you a different outlook, just a different voice. I mean, we've been there in change rooms where sometimes a different voice helps. You've got a new mentality, something new to work towards. But look, they were unlucky yesterday. I think the game could have gone either way. Second half, especially, West Ham were on top. They looked more creative than they have done in previous games. But they've only scored 2 goals this season, one a penalty and one Van Domselaar dropping it in the back of the net. So again, you're looking at a team that was scoring towards the back end of last season and looking really dangerous on the counter-attack, and now they can't find a goal from anywhere. So when you do make that one mistake, it's becoming costly. So something needs to change, and whether it does now, I mean, they haven't got a cup game this week, so maybe that's when West Ham look at it and go, right, what are we going to do? But I think for the sake of the club, they need to make a decision at some point, because they're going to either have to say, look, we back you, we trust you, and maybe it's the next 3 games because you've got 2 games that are potentially winnable and you can almost write off Man City, but we need to see something, or you have to make the decision now. I don't think it can just be like, we'll wait till Man City and then we'll make a decision, or we'll wait till the game after that. I think they have to go, we're going to back you, or I'm sorry, but it's not working right now.
Also, international break always tends to be, in both the men's and women's game, where we do see changes, because also if you wait until after the international break, it's November. And I know the dynamic of the season is different this year because of the playoff situation and the fact that Liverpool are also down there with them. We've spoken about it before, but I think the 2 things that are so contextually different about the 2 clubs is the tragic news around Matt Beard and how that will impact that group, and also a new manager coming in trying to play a very specific style of football where he doesn't necessarily have the quality of players to do that. But I think maybe there's been enough positive moments there to feel like the tide might start to turn, whereas that feels very different for a team like West Ham, who kind of went on this slightly fluky run last season, and now we're maybe seeing more of the realities because Shakira Martinez hit a hot streak, and now we're seeing more of the realities of like where they are as a football team. Jill, how frustrating is it for you to see a club that you obviously played at go through this patch and this run, because you guys also had that sort of tough run while you were there? Like, how do you manage that as a player? What would you be doing in this scenario?
I mean, it's hard because I feel like when I do look at that team and that club, I don't feel like it's the same as when we was there. And I think that's hard because I'll always have a soft spot for West Ham. And obviously then I was captaining that there, but I just don't. I think what we prided ourselves on in that team was that we had a lot of leaders in there. We played for each other. We fought for each other. And as much as when times were difficult, we still were one. And I feel like when I see West Ham, like, I don't see that same identity anymore. It's disappointing, but I also feel it's that I don't really know what West Ham want. As in, I think since when we was there and Jack Sullivan was there, I felt...
and the TV cameras were there too, lest we forget.
I felt really... I was sure of what West Ham wanted, as in the support was there, you know. I think there had to be a bit of honest conversations, because I think at times they was wanting to overachieve and the support and the budget didn't really match their expectations. But I think as a club, West Ham, we was not quite happy, but our aim was to be finishing 5th, 6th. That would have been great for West Ham, and then focus on the cup runs. We knew that we was never going to be a team that was going to challenge for the title. We was never going to get into Champions League. That was just us being realistic. But I think for us as a club, if we could be the best of the rest, and we obviously went on a cup run, but you can get it, whether it be the League Cup, whether it be the FA Cup, and be that sort of club. Whereas I feel at the moment it's a bit like, obviously with Skinner's not getting the results, and like you said, maybe that bit of the run that they had end of last season sort of covered over the cracks a little bit, and made them not look a bit better than what they are, but sort of take that pressure off. Because I just think football's mad how you haven't lost many players, like, and it's not been like that what we have when we was at West Ham, that constant turnover. And even when like I left to go to Liverpool, there was still that turnover. The next season there was a big turnover. They haven't had that. So I just think football's mad how you can go from finishing the season as strong as you did with the same really core group of players, and then this season you're having the run that you're having now. So I think it all depends on really what West Ham want. And yeah, you could say, because what's happening with Liverpool at the moment, it's sort of, well, we're not the only ones in that boat. We're not the only ones in that situation. But I think you're looking at Liverpool circumstances and Gareth Taylor coming in. I think he should be given a bit more time than Skinner, because obviously he's a new manager coming in there and wants to implement his style of play. But yeah, it's frustrating, and I think it's sad, because I think it's a great club, but I just think I'm not too sure on where West Ham women in regards to being in that club and being in that league.
West Ham pointless in their opening 6 games of the WSL for the very first time in their history. So not a great read of records. They've also faced the most big chances in the WSL of all teams, which is necessarily surprising. Jill, what would you be doing in this scenario if you were still captain there? Like, what would your role as a leader be?
I think when we went through a difficult spell before, it was more just us sticking together, and I think we was very honest. I think there was times when we'd have a result on the Sunday where we'd lost, and it would be, wouldn't it? We'd be like, right, in the group, we're having everyone come in, we're having a meeting, and it'd be, I mean, it wouldn't be every week, but we'd have a meeting where it was a very honest conversation, and I think a lot of people got stuff off of their chest, and it was sort of whatever happens in regards to the manager, we can't have no impact on that really. We have to take care of ourselves and make sure that we're all doing the right things that needs to be done. And I think it's a lot of one, sticking together, but two, having a bit of self-reflection on yourself. I think it's so easy when teams are going through bad stages to point your fingers and be like, well, she ain't doing this and she ain't doing that. The hardest conversation is the one that you have with yourself and say, like, what am I doing? Am I doing enough? Am I, whether it be recovering right? Am I preparing properly? Am I giving everything on the training pitch? Do I know other people's jobs as well? Like, they're little things that you can take care of, but the main thing I think is, as a captain, is making sure that there's no finger pointing and you're going through it together. Like, there's no easy way out. You got to ride it through and just hope that the things in regards to change or that's out of your hands, and that you can't have no impact on that. But it's just focusing on yourselves and sticking together is the main thing.
Another team that have had a poor start to the season, Everton. Brian Sorensen had a lot of new players come in. There was excitement about where they were going to go this season. Started the season with a bang with that win over Liverpool in the Merseyside derby. And since then, it's not been great. They've got 4 points on the board. Went 1-0 up yesterday against Manchester United. Ended up losing 4-1. To be honest, they very much took the lead against the run of play. United were dominating the game. And then also when Jess Park comes on, it just kind of transforms things. I think Everton, another frustrating case, Kate, of this, well, maybe less so because unlike West Ham, this season especially, they've shown lots of positive rhetoric and ambition around the women's team moving forward. They got just under 19,000 in the brand new men's stadium yesterday, which is huge. They've got the start at Goodison Park as well, this new kind of era for them. Big signings, Ruby Mace arriving. That was a record fee for Leicester to get. Lots of exciting Japanese talent coming in as well. But it just feels like the same issues that I've had with Brian Sorensen's Everton for like several seasons now, which is he wants them to play in a really distinct style of play, slow build up from the back. And when it doesn't work, there isn't really a plan B. And I just feel like I'm watching a team, again, just come back to that same conclusion of, I'm not sure this is the right person for also the direction this club's kind of trying to go in, which is they seem like they want to be ambitious. They've got these new American investors. Things feel like they're going in the right direction, but we've still kind of having the same results here.
Yeah, and I remember in the when we were doing the show about what our expectations were for the teams, I felt Everton this season would be more exciting, and I kind of criticised them and said they were quite boring and one of the teams that I didn't ever really want to watch. And then they played against Liverpool and I thought, they're turning it on, they're turning up. And even in that game though, in the first half, I think they were quite fortunate. I think it was 2-1 at half time maybe. They were quite fortunate to really still be in the game. Liverpool were all over them. And then second half, they just killed Liverpool off. So it was almost like, right, they're scoring 4 goals. They're an exciting team. Because I think what they lack is a bit of excitement going forward. And then the same patterns are now happening where they almost have an identity, but it's not necessarily suiting the players that they've brought in. And there's no like change of speed into like 3rd, 4th, 5th gear. Everything sort of stays at the same pace. And I think now the way that football's going, we said it about Arsenal, we touched upon Arsenal in terms of the build-up too slow, not moving teams about enough. The times that you find it harder as a defensive team is when teams are moving the ball quickly and shifting you about and trying to pull you into spaces that you don't want to go into. And they didn't really do that against Manchester United. And Manchester United are a good established team now. We know they're playing well this season. We know that they've maybe kicked on another gear this season. So when I saw Everton were 1-0 up yesterday during the game, then I looked at the stats, was like, oh, how are they 1-0 up? They'd had one shot, and I think at the time Man United had maybe like seven shots, and it was like half an hour into the game or something. But second half, they just imploded. And I think if you look at the goals they concede defensively, they're really poor. A lot of individual errors. And you just don't want the story of their season to be like, they are a team that can do something. They've brought in some good players, but they're not really ever going to do anything with it. So is that down to the manager? Is that down to the players they've brought in maybe are not the right fit? I don't know. It just seems to be the same story every season, and I think they'll be fine. I don't think they'll get... well, we know the relegation's off, but I don't think they're going to be in trouble of finishing bottom of the league for that playoff. But then you just want them to kick on. You want them to be a team that can look at that top 6 and go, yeah, we want to be in here. And at the moment, I'm not getting that feeling from them.
Jill, I also feel like it goes back to that same thing we talk about every season, which is they're just this group of bottom half 3 or 4 teams who just kind of coast. And it's makes the league quite crap in general when you've got this group of teams that you know aren't necessarily going to challenge the rest of the league or throw up interesting results or make huge exciting coaching changes. Like when I think about Aston Villa, they've had these periods, whether it was under Carla Ward or under Natalia Arroyo now, where you're like, I'm kind of excited about what you could do, and I've seen you now play teams and cause the big sides problems and make them work for a result. Chelsea this season already, Arsenal this season already. So I wouldn't even include them in that bracket. I think Spurs have been a little bit lucky, but look at their position in the table. They are now a side. Chelsea had to work hard for that result yesterday. But then there's these teams like in that bottom 4 or 5. I'm like, what are you offering here, guys? What are you bringing to the table this season when so many of your games are really poor quality? You kind of just rolling over against the big sides. Even though Everton, I feel like, have this ambition, where does that come into the coaching structure of the club as well? And that kind of, are we going to be looking in to bring a really exciting young manager from Europe or a really exciting young manager in England who we like what they're doing? That's what I feel like a lot of those sides are missing.
Yeah, and I think you're looking at with Everton, with the investment that they've had, they're not going to be owners who are just going to go, listen, let's chuck money into the team and off you go. I think there'll be owners who will be like, well, hold on a minute, we've pumped this money into the team. You're now getting to play at Goodison. We want results back, and I think that's where the pressure will be a little bit different. And sometimes that change is good for that. Obviously, Sorensen has been there for a while now. Maybe it is time for a young, ambitious coach to come in, or just someone to, like Kate said, about change. Is, as much as everyone fears change, sometimes change is the best thing to freshen it up. But yeah, I do think we talk about the league being competitive, and we talk about being competitive at the top, as in we don't want those, Chelsea, for example, to run away with it. We want the pack to stay with them, and we want them, when they come up against each other, the big four as such, to drop points, and it not just always be Chelsea. But then we want the rest of it to be competitive, and we want it to be where, when you're looking at I think there was a time last season where I was looking at the fixtures and I was like, oh, do you know what? I don't know who's gonna get them results today. And that's what we need, and we need that to be weekly. But that's teams being held accountable as well for what they're doing, and not just sort of, oh, do you know what? Well, we're not up there with the top 4, and do you know what? We're probably not the best of the rest. So, as long as we don't finish bottom or whatever, and that's why I feel like with relegation, the last few seasons, a lot of teams have been let off, I think, and a lot of club owners and clubs in general have been let off because they've been poor and they haven't really matched the ambition and that of the rest of the league, and they've got away with not having to be relegated. And then you've also got a lot of teams in WSL 2 who are doing the right thing and being positive and getting managers in and funding and the support and the facilities and everything, who could rightly so deserve a spot in the WSL. So yeah, I think the relegation, obviously when it eventually does come in, will be something that will hopefully be exciting and sort teams out.
Yeah, hopefully. So from 26-27, there'll be one team automatically relegated and then the playoff as well. So potentially 2 teams. It does feel like there just needs to be a serious kind of rocket up a lot of those teams down the bottom. Kate, do you think even for some of these clubs being relegated is enough to scare them? Like, do some of them even care enough to feel like relegation is enough of a risk? They'll just exist anyway.
I think they do care, because I think the status thing of just saying they're WSL almost is their branding, not anything else that they're doing. It's just, we're a WSL club, so we're one of the best teams in English football in the world, because the WSL is arguably the best league in the world. I think the worst thing that's happened this season, the timing of the no relegation with a club that's come up with ambition, it's paired at the worst possible time, because I think one club would have had a real big shock this season, whereas previous seasons we've seen clubs come up that want to invest more than they have done. So they're going, oh yeah, we're really investing in this, but really when you look at the comparisons between WSL and WSL2, there's a huge difference. So for them to commit from players on a certain wage, and then they might start paying people 40, 50 grand, that doesn't even touch the sides now in the WSL. So for WSL2 teams coming up, they're thinking, we're really being ambitious, we're really paying players a lot of money and we're bringing in this, but they haven't competed and they've gone straight back down. Even if in a few games they've given it a good go, now we've seen London City with a bit more ambition, and by no means are they the finished article, but they've got 3 wins without really playing that well, just because of some of the players they've brought in. They've got players that can now win games. So for all the other clubs that are sort of floating around that, you look at West Ham, you look at Liverpool. Liverpool are a huge, huge, huge club. Arguably the biggest club in world football, maybe along with Man United, Real Madrid, Barcelona, as a brand. But they're not investing in that team of, we want to be the best on all fronts. And then you look at that with teams like Everton, Leicester. You know, Leicester are arguably punching above their weight, not in a patronising way, but you look at the investment, the players they're bringing in, you kind of always just go, right, well, they're going to languish at the bottom. They're not. Their ambition is not to be a top club. So now without that relegation, I feel all teams feel safe, because 99 times out of 100, if you put the WSL bottom team versus the team that's going to finish third in WSL 2, they should win that game, because there's huge disparities between the leagues. So I almost feel it's good in a way, because being a West Ham fan, I don't want West Ham to be in trouble and in danger of that. But I actually think now clubs are getting away with it this season, because it's okay if they finish bottom. We don't want to. It doesn't look good on us, but there's no real jeopardy. And that's kind of the frustrating thing, because I think teams would have had to pull their finger out and gone, actually, we don't want to be the team that gets relegated, because it's not easy to then come back. You lose a lot of players, you lose a lot of sponsorship, you lose a lot of fans. And listen, women's fans can be quite fickle. Some people haven't picked their team yet, but sometimes they'll follow players. And so if you lose the players that you've got, you lose the fans, and they want to see opposition players as well. You see it at West Ham, their biggest crowds are when you've got more Lionesses playing. That's just how it is at the moment, unfortunately. So if you lose the players you've got and you're not watching the opposition, you're going to lose a lot of fans. So it's a real danger for them. But I don't think the clubs care enough at the moment, because there's not a real...
there's not jeopardy.
There's not a real jeopardy of going down right now.
I think we talked about this when we've spoken about general changes to the WSL and the future of the league, but it's also creating those incentives for clubs to want to push forward with their investments, whether that's the bonuses that you're entitled to for where you finish in the league, or I know, for example, you know, when I've chatted to Maggie Murphy, who's now at Aston Villa in the past, she's been very vocal about wanting bonuses tied to off-pitch metrics, like whoever is doing really well with attendances, they get an extra bit of cash at the end of the season, so that clubs are incentivized to progress beyond just avoiding relegation. Because if that's the only marker for your season, and you know that only at most one team's going down automatically this season, no one's going down automatically, then you're kind of like, well, why, you know, I understand people should be investing anyway, but what is the incentive for clubs to want to push forward, to want to challenge, to want to make change, and bring in spend money on bringing in the right talent? Because they'd look at that and say, well, what am I playing for? I guess FA Cup prize money's gone up, but League Cup prize money is nothing. Where is that incentive for them, Jill?
I mean, you could have probably a whole podcast on this, in the sense of you asking as well, what are the ambitions and the reasons behind a lot of these men clubs as such setting up women's teams? You know, I think when I was at Arsenal and Emma was coming back to Chelsea, and I remember we had our conversation before I signed there, and it weren't, oh, do you know what, we're thinking of setting up they'd already had a women's team. It weren't like, oh, do you know what, we're just going to, I don't know, just take over. We're going to be trying to finish better than where we are now, because I think that was like near the bottom. I think like 9th or 10th, I think. Emma went there with the attitude of, we are going to be the best in this league, and then we're going to go and be the best in Europe. And she went to Chelsea and she said, if I'm signing basically for Chelsea, like Emma's going there, not to be that sort of club. She wanted to take them to where she wanted to, and Chelsea had to buy into that to get Emma. And so then I feel like when you do lose certain people from our game as such, obviously.
I think Casey as well is another one, right? When she was at United, she was constantly pushing and challenging the hierarchy. Those individuals, Casey's now head coach at Canada, Emma's now head coach at the US. Those individuals are so important to push change, not just at the clubs they were at, but across the league as well, because they demand better, they want more. As soon as you lose those people, it feels like there's such a gap.
Yeah, because those people have been there since the very beginning, since before the whole professional league come about, when it's a time when we paid to play, and that's why I think we don't tap into those people enough, in my opinion. I think there's a lot of people who come into the women's game now because it's attractive, and it looks great that, oh yeah, this men's club has this women's team and they're doing this and they're doing that. But you should lean on the people that have been there from the very beginning and use them to be the people that fight for more. And I feel like it's so attractive now, even to be a player, as in, it gets my back up a little bit, because obviously we're players that come from a different generation, and it's you got players, the demands are already there for them, whether that be from agents or, do you know what I mean, that they're coming in and they've only ever seen a professional game. They've never had to
Jill's like, you don't know how lucky you've got it.
We was doing 3-4 jobs and then going to play we was doing Champions League midweek and stuff, and that's what I feel like is hard, because you lose all them characters from the women's game. When I was talking to Lud yesterday, and Lud's is now daytime doing a university, she's a lecturer at university. Her experience, that people could really lean on in the women's game, and that's what I think. You just got to have the right people there pushing and saying, hold on a minute, you want to come in and you want to invest this amount of money, but you're sort of making them accountable. Who's doing that? Do you know what I mean? I think where so many people come into the women's game when it's as big and as nice and as lovely as it is now, but those people, you talk about Emma Casey, they would have held them owners and people above accountable for, oh, this is what we're going to do, this is the investment we're going to do, and then 6 months later, the promises that they made don't happen. They would have been the ones to push for it.
Jill, we got to send you in. Where are you going to go?
Oh, no, I'd sound too thick for all that sort of stuff.
You'd be Jill,
come
you'd be
on.
brilliant. We need to get you director of football role somewhere.
I'll just stamp your primary school.
No, you'd be knocking on the
She's
door.
saying this to the kids every day.
Yeah.
I demand that.
We need more, guys.
Yeah.
Where are the
You've gotta be
standards? You don't know
accountable.
how lucky you've got it in 2025 in a
No.
primary school.
Yeah, exactly.
Kate, I feel like you'd be good at it as well. So the Kate Longhurst interim manager spell is coming. we're gonna speak it into existence.
No, I think Gilly's right though. It's unfortunately we still lean on people rather than an organisation, and you always need people at a club that can push it. But it's funny because we were talking outside. Me and Flo were talking outside before you came, Jill.
Sorry, having a secret chat.
PJ, this is like a private joke, isn't it, PJ?
Turning up late. Me and Flo got here for 9.
Blame the train.
But we were just sort of chatting, and I actually said that it's so important that people within the club push for things, even when things are going right and going wrong. And I used you as an example that when I was at West Ham, what is the role of a captain? I said, well, Gilly was always pushing for more. And not, even when things were going all right on the pitch and you weren't frightened to have those conversations. And we had quite a few people in the team that would always push and always say, this isn't good enough or this isn't acceptable. Even if we had it all right, certain other players might not have it all right. The younger ones, the way they're getting treated, or living conditions for people coming in. It's got a lot better now, the conditions for players coming in, especially from abroad. But we had people in the club that care about people, care about the club, but we weren't frightened to go a bit higher up and say, this isn't acceptable, we need this, we need that. And it's not us being demanding, but it's just having a base that you can work off to be as professional as you can and make sure that everyone in the club is treated that way, and not just, okay, you've got 1 or 2 star players, or you've got, we're winning games so we can just keep quiet on this. No, that's actually the best time to go to them, because you're saying, look, we're getting the results on the pitch, but we need this, we need that, if you want to start competing. But I don't think we have people that challenge like that enough in clubs. And I can't say, because I haven't been around every single club, so I can't say that's not what is happening. But when I was at Liverpool, we had people like Casey Stoney that came in and showed me a completely different way of how to be as a player and a leader, and what was expected to ask for more, because I was always just happy to be there. So it wasn't till I was in my mid-20s, late 20s, where I started thinking, no, actually, for the benefit of other people and the benefit of the team, and if you really want to progress, you have to challenge people at the top. And I don't know how accessible that is, especially now. I think some people you don't even see anywhere near the top. But when we had Jack at West Ham, we weren't frightened. And, okay, maybe because he was 18 and we could
Because he was a child.
try and nudge him a little bit. But we weren't frightened of saying, this isn't good enough. This person working here, we need more from them. We're not asking for them to be sacked, but we need more from them because you've gone from not being professional and now you're bringing in players that have seen what professional looks like, and we're not getting those standards. So you have to have people at the club pushing, whether that's captains, leaders within the team. And I think that's one thing that lacks when I look at some of the teams in the league, is you just don't have the people pushing in the right direction. It's, I'll take the money, I'm happy to be here, and I'll move on when it's not working.
Well, I'll tell you for free, I'd run through a brick roll for Gilly Flaherty.
Thanks, Flo.
Anything.
I say same back to you.
Every pre-pod, Gilly's out there being like, come on, guys, you've got to give our best work. And I'd say, yes, Jill, you've got me. Well, that's enough chat about the philosophical future of the teams down the bottom of the WSL. Jill, have a good Champions League week.
Thank you.
Chelsea, who are they playing? Bolton? No. Paris, that's it.
Paris.
Chelsea, Paris,
Knew we
that's
were
who
gonna
you're
repeat.
doing. Kate, any West Ham action for you this week? I know you're sort of dipping your toes in the West Ham comms.
No, just something at the foundation tomorrow.
Nice.
But,
Very nice.
Yeah, no games. There's no game this weekend, so.
Yeah, so it's a League Cup for some teams, but not everyone, and also a bit of a break for some of the teams that are going to be playing the Champions League. And then it's international break, so we'll be back next Monday talking all things happen across the week and international break. We'll see you then.